All in Sports Network. We love sports.
How's it going, everybody? Ben Peck here, All in Aggies, Rogue Sports Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us. We have some exciting news for Texas A&M looking ahead to 2025 and how they're going to finish out 2024. The return of Veon Moss and Reed Adams to boot to strengthen this team heading into next season. We're going to break that down a little bit even further in just a minute. Plus, talking about Mike Elko and how this team is sort of viewing the bowl game experience. You know, a lot of talk about, do bowl games, let's just be honest, do bowl games matter? What can you glean from them? Are they a useful tool? How are they useful? In what ways? To what extent? We'll talk about that a little bit. And then just some other things around campus, men's basketball and women's basketball with a couple wins to close out their fall semester. And then we've got some good developments on the tour on the ladies' side in professional golf. But we'll start with Veon Moss is coming back to Texas A&M. Now, listen, this was, I dare to say, expected. And this, by the way, I should say, heavily implied by his latest Instagram post. BRB, he's coming back, running it back. And then again, Reed Adams really helping out on the offensive line as well. He's going to be coming back per his announcement for next season. Veon Moss, 765 yards rushing before he got hurt in the South Carolina game, early in that South Carolina game, 10 touchdowns, and was, I believe, the leading back in the SEC, was the leading rusher in the SEC at the point that he left out, or certainly among the top. Now, I don't know that I necessarily expected him to go professional, but you always think if a guy is at the running back position specifically, if a guy is good enough to be an NFL running back and he's shown that he can be a guy, and to what upside is their draft stock for a running back, I think you always have to at least be mindful of the idea that those type of guys might be looking to jump if it makes sense for them, and if they feel like there's, just a quicker head start on a lucrative career for them down the road. So did he show enough to get drafted and to be a guy in the league? I think he arguably did. I mean, I would be surprised if he's not an NFL guy at the end of next season, after that draft is over. But I don't know that it would have been a slam dunk that he would be, viewed as like a very highly rated running back in the class. Not to say I don't think highly of him, but, I just don't know what NFL world people would think of him. And, what we saw from him, it was very good this past year. And certainly I think if he finished out the year and was one of the lead backs in the SEC as he was at the time when he went out, I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't get a look. But the thing for me too is, like, while the upside of being a high draft pick is maybe limited for running backs these days, I also do think even if it's like the difference between a 6th round, 5th round pick and a 3rd, 4th round pick, it's just an extra layer of investment that the team has in you, and the ability for them to kind of give you a chance, or it makes it harder for them to kind of move on and just say, okay, let's turn the page, let's reset the clock, all those things. And I do think probably another thing that you'd like to see from him a little bit more is catching the ball out of the backfield. 11 receptions last year, 10 receptions this year. Again, shortened season for him this year, but really more of a pure runner. But I mean, a beast and a grinder, obviously. But I think that could play a factor in terms of, I don't know how much of a safe bet it would have been for him to go to the league and give up what was already going to be a good opportunity. I think that's the bigger thing for me. If you're on the fence and A&M is going to be just as good as it was, if not better than it was, this year, that it will be next year, and or the NFL opportunity is not going to go away for him. So I think this is probably the safe decision, the smart decision. I don't think it would have been a bad decision if he said, hey, look, wear and tear on your body, I want to get to the league, I think I can make it, stick around, and more power to him. But huge for A&M to get him, because now take a look at what that does to the depth chart. You've got I mean, I believe pretty much everyone coming back in that running back room. Obviously, Reuben Owens, and I think I want to say Amari Daniels. Sorry, I had this up here earlier. Yeah, Amari Daniels has one more year left to go. So, you know, he should be that should be a position of strength once again. I would love to see how it'll look for A&M as a team that really can tap into that just that depth that we didn't get to see. The Reuben Owens, Veon Moss back and forth. Reuben Owens, we'll hopefully see him more in the bowl game and see what he can do. And if he's feeling better, take some of the load off of Amari Daniels and, again, see what he can do. By the way, Amari Daniels, he is good to go for next year. I thought he was, but 4 games in 2021. So the redshirt season there. But, huge boost again, and touching on the offensive line. Marjorie Adams coming back. I think he was very solid when he was in there. Physical presence. I think that was, he was one of those guys that when things were going well, I never really saw him get blown up in pass protection, but when things were going well, I think he was one of the guys you looked at and driving through blocks and finishing blocks, and you said that's sort of the Aggies turning the corner and doing what we had hoped to see maybe more of during the Jimbo years, that we finally got to see a little bit during that stretch where they're 7-1. They're running the ball with Veon Moss, and you're saying, okay, this team can really run the ball and control the line of scrimmage from that standpoint. I think, Marjorie Adams was a big part of that. I saw a lot of blocks that he, maybe not even pancaked guys, but again, just playing through the whistle, bringing some toughness. Like to see that. And you've got a lot of guys. I'll put it this way: you've got a lot of guys on the offensive line transferring out who are probably going to be depth pieces. Meaning, I think the guys they probably feel pretty good about the guys that they have in there that have, are in line to come back for next season. And then you add, freshmen, obviously Lamont Rogers, see what he can do. If he can maybe, at the very least, factor into the depth, but maybe if he can even compete for real playing time in the fall. So we'll see. Feel relatively good about both those positions. And just taking a look at some of the portal gains to this point, they have not gone after. I don't want to say they haven't gone after. They have not locked down a commitment from an offensive lineman just yet. So again, I think that probably will be looking for that, at least for depth, just down the road. But I think you got to feel pretty good about where you're at with, at least the starting units for both running back and for offensive line. Well, definitely for running back, Veon Moss, and then you've got depth there too. But, and then wide receiver, we're talking about that. Casey Concepcion on a visit to Texas A&M. He was TikToking about it. So, that would be a huge boost if you factor in the freshmen that you have coming in. Like we said, if you look at returning production with Noah Thomas, Terry Bussey, you throw in, a Jerome Miles is, a 5-star, hopefully an immediate impact freshman kind of guy. And then, Micah Hudson, what he could do. Mario Craver has, played fairly well, given being a true freshman in the SEC on a kind of let's be honest, a bad team this year, less than ideal circumstances. If he doesn't need to carry the weight as much and can kind of settle into a specified role here. And we're going to be able to see some of those guys, some of those younger guys, and what they can do in the bowl game as well at the Vegas Bowl. So I think receivers coming together, Concepcion or someone proven would be crucial for that for me. And then at the tight end spot, they did have another commitment since last we talked. Nate Borkercher, I believe is how you say it, Nebraska tight end, really a blocking tight end, and kind of along the lines of Micah Riley. I think what you're seeing with this Colin Klein offense and design and everything else is really that emphasis on, tight ends as pass catchers and weapons. That's great, but you need to be able to open up some holes in the run game. And, especially if you want to go not even bunch formation, but just kind of heavy sets and, give either the running back or quarterback, more leverage in the read option game, obviously with Marcel Reed, the more help you have on that offensive line, if you include the tight ends, the better. So Borkircher, I think, also like fairly competent in the pass game. I don't think he's like a, I don't think he'll be all league, receiving numbers, but I don't think he'll be a liability in the receiving game. I think he'll give you a little bit of depth there. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Feel pretty good about it. And again, just sort of getting started too, which is kind of the crazy part. They've got some other guys lined up to come on visits as well. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see. I'm not sure how much more I would expect from A&M in the portal in terms of just raw numbers, but we'll see. We'll kind of bear with it and see how things go down the road. All right, we will move on now to Mike Elko talking about what this team can gain from the bowl game. If you are still with us, be sure to like, subscribe, help us out, help us make this channel the best we can. Let's talk about what the Aggies can get from this bowl game. Las Vegas Bowl, 8-4, chance to go 9 wins for the first time since 2020. Again, now I know the 2020 season was probably better than 9 wins. I know that's that was really probably should have been, 10, 11, 12 win season if you factor in the COVID. But 9-1, and now a chance to go 9-4. Pretty good for year one, and I think pretty good momentum. I think this Las Vegas Bowl feels a lot like the Texas Bowl last year for the Aggies in reverse, where the Aggies have a lot of their key pieces, playmakers back in the game, few opt-outs. You got the few guys on the D-line going pro. That'll be another area, by the way, that we talked about that you want to see how they can do and how they can step up. Coach Elko talked about Cassius Howell, Rylan Kennedy as 2 guys in particular who will see a little more playing time, see what they can do and the kind of impact they can have. I think those guys are going to be, because we haven't seen any defensive line portal additions to this point. So I do think regardless, even if you get, one or a couple or a few, whatever, I think those guys are going to have to be very important pieces to next year and what that unit looks like defensively. But this is what Mike Elko had to say just about treating the bowl game with the intensity, urgency, and the respect in general, and treating it as an opportunity to get better for this very young team.
Yeah, I think when you talk about, and this is how we talked about it with the team, when you're trying to build a championship program and you're trying to build a championship team, that journey doesn't stop. And so in order to become a really good football team, you have to play football really well consistently over a long period of time. And the Las Vegas Bowl is another opportunity for our team to go through game preparation, go out onto a field, play another opponent, play for a trophy, all of those things. And so just because it's a bowl game, it doesn't mean that the journey stops or oh, it's just a bowl game and we can go out there and not play well and then just start over again. Like, it doesn't work like that. And we talk about that a lot in our building. And I just think it's a mentality of what we're trying to do around here, building a championship team. And so, obviously it's a great opportunity to go out and play a big school on the West Coast, and it's a Big Ten SEC matchup, and those matchups mean stuff. And so it's kind of, in our opinion, the first game moving forward to the 2025 season, and it'll kind of launch the offseason one way or the other.
All right. I like what you're hearing there, just in terms of, like you said, this is, I think, building towards and using this year as steps to build towards bigger things in the future. I think I want to touch on something real quick at the end of this with the playoff, but I think this was largely, as I've said, was it a good year, bad year, success, failure, especially given both how things started, but how things ended, disappointing. I've been saying it was a productive year for Texas A&M, not necessarily good or bad. I think 9-3, unquestionably a good year. 8-4, I've always said 8-4 depends on what type of 8-4 it looks like. I think I placed bigger value of being in the conversation, being in the mix for longer, over something like what South Carolina did, where you stumble and you get hot toward the end of the year. I mean, both relatively equal out. And, you could certainly make the argument, South Carolina, with how they finished, with the win over Clemson and actually being 9-3 carries more weight. It certainly does. And I'm not trying to make this specifically a comparison between Texas A&M and South Carolina, but let's say South Carolina had finished 8-4 and lost to Clemson. I think it probably is better, and it feels like a better season if you were, in it all the way toward the end, rather than kind of out of it early. That's just how I've consumed college football for the most part. And that being said, it was quite a few losses at the end. If it's like one or two, I think maybe it softens the blow a lot. But yeah, I mean, still a lot to build on for this team and a lot of young guys who will be back and who got experience playing time and who are going to be counted on for more experience and more playing time next year. So I think when you factor all that in, I feel pretty good about where, you see guys progressing and really specifically with this bowl game, what we could see with all that, on the offensive line. Trey Zune's still kind of a question mark, but Trey Zune notwithstanding, you should have like offensive line, everyone coming back, everyone in this game playing comes back. Receivers, I think Moose Muhammad might be out from what I'm seeing, but receivers is going to be a chance for some of those younger guys to potentially fill in and get a little more looks. We'll see what else we get from Terry Bussey. Reuben Owens getting back into shape. Obviously, Marcel Reed goes without saying. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But then defensively, we talked about it with the defensive front. I actually think defensively is probably the best feeler for this team going into next year when you talk about the defensive line, and led by what I guess DJ Hicks is sort of your biggest proven commodity at this point on there, and seeing what, like we said, Cassius Howell, Rylan Kennedy, some of those guys can do, just in terms of providing a little dynamic versatility. Linebackers, I mean, you're pretty set there with Sanford, York, Scooby Williams. You've got options there, and then DBs, you've got a lot of guys coming back. Will Lee, I mean, Tyreek Chappelle won't be playing in this game, but he comes back, so a chance to see what they can do against a weakened USC, especially with Zachariah Branch out and Miller Moss out, their running back out. So depleted unit, I think a chance for almost, I don't want to say glorified spring game. I know some people say that with these bowl games now. I wouldn't say quite that. Mike Elko said it feels like an opener game where kind of have an idea what to expect from them, but different personnel, different groupings than you normally would see. So maybe still a little bit of a feeling out process, but it is, still going to be a chance to, I think, put those guys in a position to succeed, make some strides, hopefully win that game, go into next year, 9-4. And then I think you have enough momentum, especially depending on what happens in the playoff, to kind of lean on this being a foundation for sustainable success, not just success, but sustainable, and less of a roll the dice every year with the transfer portal type of deal. I think A&M is, and I think the other thing I like about it for A&M is they're in good position to be relatively selective in the portal to make sure that the guys they go get are pretty high conversion rates in terms of hitting on these guys and making it meaningful moving forward. All right. Last little thing I want to touch on for football, but not necessarily Texas A&M specific. Bring out your Clemson orange gear because Clemson plays Texas, obviously. I think this game actually is pretty important for some narrative reasons, because I said, we talked about the good year, bad year, productive year. I think the one caveat you have with A&M and how good you feel about this year when it all shakes out is how much farther are you behind Texas, given, I'm saying, for this specific season. Because I think the problem is if Texas takes off and gets their act together and starts rolling, then, you run into a situation like, I mean, I was going to say like Auburn, where like maybe, even when you start to hit your stride, Alabama's still Alabama, and the state, they suck up all the oxygen. But I think even more so because of not only how much in-state talent you have in Texas, but just the allure of playing college football in Texas. You don't want guys to start feeling like Texas is like the destination school if you want to do that, right? And I know it's a different vibe, different cultures, different There's a lot of differences too. I don't want to overstate that, but I think if somehow Clemson can come in and defeat Texas, and you've got Texas going, can't do math. What, 11? They go 11-2, and then they'd be 11-3. That's a lot different than them going and making a run to the semifinals or the championship game with the number one recruiting class coming in and saying, hey, we're that close to going like over the top. We, Final Four last year. We'll see what they do this year. But SEC championship game with a loss. And then you do that. If I think a loss to Clemson really kind of deflates a lot of what the momentum they have moving forward. I don't want, if Texas fans see this, I'm not saying that Texas is like going away by any stretch, but I think it could go a long way towards blunting sort of this like sky's the limit enthusiasm. And the only team that's been able to beat us is Georgia. I think Clemson starts to raise like other questions and red flags about, okay, this offense is still kind of weird. Like we're not really seeing it match up to the level you would think with proven commodities at quarterback and receiver and, tight end and offensive line. Like they check all the boxes, but for some reason, I know the run game had some injuries, but for some reason they did not click on all cylinders going over the top. And then defense, they're going to have some pieces back, but really good. My point with the defense is they performed so well this year. It's going to be hard to imagine them being better than they were this year. So, if that's something where it's like, how much better is the offense going to get and how close, is the defense going to be able to replicate it? Then I think there's some questions asked. So we'll see. I think a Clemson win would just be a nice little way to kind of, again, blunt anything Austin is doing, the team in Austin, and we'll see what they do. And then for the rest of it, I think Tennessee, I don't know. Tennessee, the other SEC teams in there, Tennessee, Georgia, like what you get from them. I think Georgia's still the big dogs on the block. They're not going away. Tennessee, maybe. This could be a chance for them to vault into some sort of, hey, look what we got building over here conversation. There's one other team that I can't remember off the top of my head in the playoff, but yeah, we'll see how they do, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I got to look this up because it's bothering me. What's the other A&M team or A&M team, SEC team? Texas, Tennessee. That's it. And Georgia. Oh, only 3. Okay, so there you go. All right, now let's talk some men's basketball, shall we? 77-45 win over Houston Christian. Nothing too crazy, but Wade Taylor did not play in this game today. Really spread it out. Had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys with 15 or more minutes. Hayden Hefner, 19 points, 3 for 8 shooting. Shooting as a team, 7 for 17. We've talked about that. That's probably the biggest thing I was looking at because we talked about the difference with this team being a well-shooting team with the good rebounding and then just an average or below average team. That's the difference from second-round team to a, Elite 8 team to me on any given night for this team. 77-45, takes care of business. Number 12 in the country, 10-2 overall as you head into the winter break. And then you come out of it with, I believe, one more game before opening up with Texas in the SEC. I tried to look at their schedule, and for some reason, it is trying to have the game play for me. There we go. Abilene Christian when you come back on the 28th, and then Texas on January 4th. So those guys playing well. And then let's wrap up with some golf. Ladies golf, just real quick shout out. Blanca Fernandez Garcia Pogio. She was with the team for last 4 years. She earned her spot on the Ladies European Tour, 17 under through 5 rounds in Morocco. She was also there with Zoe Slaughter, by the way, shout out. And just, again, kind of capping off a really successful pro qualifying circuit for the Aggies. You had Adela Chernusic, the national champion, who earned a spot on the LPGA Tour. You had Haley Cooper, Maddie Zurich, and Blanca earning their way to the final round of that qualifying for the LPGA. And then on the European side, Zoe Slaughter won her qualifying tournament to get into this final stage. And then Blanca goes in this. She was leading after, I think, 3 or 4 rounds, and then after 3 rounds, and then finishes 6th place and earns her spot on the European Tour. So really excited to see some Aggies popping up on the pro circuit. I think that's what makes, quite frankly, the golf, tennis, and even track exciting to watch. Is, dare I say, you want A&M to perform well as a team. But for me personally, I think the exciting part about it, even more so, is seeing, people come in as amateurs, as they say in golf or track or whatever, tennis, swimming, diving, and then burst onto the international stage and start to make a name for themselves there. So quite frankly, A&M has not really had much success in recent past, at least on the ladies tour. They kind of had a gap there for a while, but now you're starting to see Aggies have some momentum there. It'll be exciting to watch those ladies. Sam Bennett, unfortunately, he was at the Q school qualifying for the PGA Tour. He had to withdraw. He was narrowly, if I understand the qualification mechanisms, he narrowly missed out on a chance to qualify just out of his performance on the Korn Ferry Tour. So Sam Bennett, though, knocking on the door. Chance for him to be on the PGA Tour probably as soon as 2 seasons from now, 2026. So Devil Chernusic going to be there in 2025 on the lady side. And you've got all sorts of buzz with all these teams on campus on the spring semester. We know how good the spring semesters are for A&M athletics. Excited to see what it looks like as we get ready to turn the calendar here in just about, 11 days. So only 11 days left in 2024. Thank you so much for joining us here, All in Aggies. Just a quick recap of what's been going down. Again, it's sort of a lull in the season. There's a lot of off the field stuff with recruiting and transfer portal, this, that, the other, but slowing down with some games until we flip it over. We get back. We really get into basketball season. Until then, be sure to stay with us here, All in Aggies. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ben Peck, like the video, and comment as well if you had any thoughts on any of the things we discussed today. Thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, or week. I was going to say week. It's got like 3 hours left. Enjoy it. And then we got the weekend coming up. I'll try to hop on here tomorrow, give you some more thoughts, monitor further developments. And regardless, when we see you next time, we hope you have a great day. Until then.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.